Okay, so I'm wearing the same shirt that I am in the last video, but it's comfy and I don't care. So here I am in my new apartment on my college campus. It's really cool. It's really smaller. It's a lot smaller. If anybody wants a couch, we can't fit the couch indoors. But anyway, what I really wanted to talk about, well, there's the air conditioning coming to say hi. So I really wanted to talk about was I had a dream last night and I wrote it down, so it's great. But I can't find it again. But since I wrote it down, I like retained more than I usually would. So it's kind of like I want to talk about it, and then I have a question about it for everyone to discuss. Um, so in this dream, I was a real estate agent with like a blazer and everything, and I was like married and had like kids and a dog and like a backyard, and I had like really small children, and they were like 3, 4, like kindergarten age, and so for some reason I was in charge of this like little cul-de-sac, and I was like the in The Walking Dead, in like the not the season that's like season 5, not right now, but like season 4 at the end, um, when there's like that cul-de-sac thing and like the mayor, that lady, I was like her. So it wasn't a zombie apocalypse or anything. There's no spoilers, don't worry. Um, so when the whole point of this dream was that I had gotten this job. I was appointed in this position of power that I was in charge of the school also. And so with the kindergarten age people, they would, in this cul-de-sac, rotate homes every month. So, like, you would have your children in this place, and everybody in the cul-de-sac had to have children, and they all had to be around the same age, and then you would send them to a different household each month, and each household would have something to offer the child, like they spoke a different language or they had a different religion, and so uh, since the children were so small, they'd be more welcoming and they'd understand more and they'd absorb more, and so that was the whole point. But I was also in charge of the people of who got to be in this little closed gated community or not. And there was like they had to be couples, and then we split up the mother father couples, father father mother mother couples, whatever, and we split them up, and we interviewed them separately at the same time with the same questions, and it wasn't like intimidating or anything. It was like, you have to meet this criteria, and then we're going to test you on these things, like if you have any psychopathic tendencies, or maybe you have an undiagnosed mental disorder, or maybe you qualify for something else, or maybe you can, maybe you have something else to offer the child than what you're applying for. And so we'd give them these tests, and then we would ask them, are you child molesters? and so if you tested high on the child molester test, you would obviously not be able to be a part of our closed gated community. However, there was more criteria that could disqualify you. So if you scored high on the child molester test, you would obviously not be allowed. But let's say if you smoked, you wouldn't be allowed. If you had a violent history, if you were a convicted felon, like a fresh convicted felon. I don't know. That's a topic for another time. But uh, if you were deemed a hazard to the children in any way, you were not allowed to, have a house there, have a home there. And so there was obviously multiple people who came in and multiple people who had to turn away for different reasons. But when these children were living, like, let's imagine a circle, and you just kind of rotated the kids around this circle, each house each month, because every child has a house and every child moves one house left each month. So while they were living there, they were just living there, and you could get out with friends, they could go outside of this community, they could do whatever they wanted as 4 and 5-year-olds. But you could, like, if the parents were going out, then you would be able to like leave your kids with the babysitter or whatever. And so outside of this close-gated community was the rest of the town, and it was a small town but big enough for a private community. I don't know. It was a dream. It doesn't matter. But you could leave your kids with other people because they were, for all intents and purposes of that month, your kids. But obviously, since it was kind of a rich private community, you had like the moms and the dads, and they had the sweaters, and then they put the sweaters in the front like in the movies, and they were rich, and you had like moms with short spiky hair and "can I see your manager" type of moms. So they were concerned about the people who were turned away from the closed-gated community, that their children would be molested by them because they were turned away, henceforth the possibility of those people outside of the community being child molesters. You could, if you scored high on the child molester test, it was obviously, we told the person, just the person who scored, and we offered them treatment. We're like, hey, this is a severe mental disorder, sexual disorder. We can offer you free treatment. It's all free. It's all discreet. You don't even have to tell your significant other. It's all confidential. But they did not have to take the treatment, and so it wasn't anything like that. But so all of these parents were really concerned that when their kids were being babysat on the discretion of another parent outside of the community, and if somebody had severe depression and they couldn't take care of the child, then they would be turned away, or if we didn't deem them financially stable enough, or just like little piddly things, that wouldn't necessarily harm the child, but they wouldn't be 100% best all around for the child. And that was the whole point. I wanted like the best of the best parents, and different colored people, and different religious people, and different cultures, and one of the best of those cultures to be experienced by these children, because it was a rich community. So anyway, all these parents are worried that everybody outside of who was denied from the community were child molesters. And I also had children, but I had the information on who was hiding their gambling problem from their wife, and who had sexual thoughts about children, and who smoked. I knew these people because I interviewed them, because that's what was my job. But I was also a part of the move your child to the left in the gated community, because I also had children, and I also took care of children. So when my children, I would like staple to their backpacks like recommended babysitter, these people, because they're really nice people and I had met them, and maybe they were just 1 month away of having the required amount of paycheck, because you had to have like $1,000 a month income for over a year, over 2 years, and they had like 1 year and 11 months, or something like that, and I like, they're really nice and they almost made it, and so I'd be like, I really like these people. Recommended babysitter, they're super cheap, they'll do it for free, they're really nice. If if you're gonna go out, send them to this babysitter. And so these other parents would play this game of sending my children to different people in the community to figure out who was a child molester, because they would call and say, oh yeah, we sent your children, your children are being babysat by the Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, it's totally fine. I'd be like, why aren't they with the Williamsons? And they'd be like, oh, well, we've known the Johnsons, and, they just seem so nice. Or they offered and they were really cheaper. They were the only one available, or the Winston-Sons weren't available at that time. And so, judging by my reaction, and if I went to go get my kids from these people, they would be like, oh, they're a child molester. And then they would, since they were also rich and probably had influence in the rest of the town, they would go and, like, they seemed like the type of people to, like, deny services to child molesters. Anyway, and it was like, if you scored high on the test, you didn't necessarily have to have sexual thoughts about children, you didn't have to molest a child, you didn't have to almost molest a child, you didn't have to watch child porn, it was just like, you scored high on the test. It doesn't really mean anything. It could mean something. So you're not allowed in our community. And they would play this game with my kids to send them to different people around the town to see who was child molesters and who would be kicked out of the town. So I was not in charge of the other children at the time, so other children could be sent to anybody else in the town. There was a possibility of people who scored high on the test, as well as people who didn't apply at all, to be child molesters. The people in the town could have sent their children to anyone in the town. Since it was anonymous, the test was anonymous, they could potentially be sending their children to a child molester's house. For some reason, I'm like bound by law to not speak of this to anybody else, about who got turned away and why. But they always found out who applied and who wasn't in the cul-de-sac in the first place, so it wasn't like, where they, or are they, what happened, they're gonna come soon? Like, no, they got turned away. And so with that, the other children were potentially in danger. But it was like, I didn't know where the children were going, and I didn't, I'm only in charge of the children I had in my house at the moment. And I had no proof of anything except that they scored high on the test. Now, if all this is making sense, when one of these parents sent my children to someone who scored high on the test, and then my child came back to me and said that they were molested by this person, who is to blame, is the question. Is it my fault for not breaking the law? Is it my fault for not breaking the law in my dream to tell everyone these are child molesters and banish them from the town, even though they very well could not be child molesters? And just whoever scored high on the test had to leave, which would prevent people from applying to get in, as well as it would not everyone in the town would take the test. It's just if you applied there to the mini town within the town. It's getting really long, sorry. If you applied, but if you didn't apply and you were in the town and you were a child molester, we wouldn't know. We wouldn't have any proof or rhyme or reason to say you're a child molester. Obviously, unless someone came forward. But we wouldn't know. The people in the cul-de-sac wouldn't know. So the people in the cul-de-sac, one of the parents sent my children to someone who was denied into the cul-de-sac, and because of they scored high on the test, they molested my child. My child came back and said I was molested. Is that my fault for not turning away all of those people? Or is that even though it's conniving and gross and whatever, is that my fault that my child was molested by this person, or is it the gross parent's fault? I'm gonna leave it there because that's the question I want answered. I'm not gonna tell you what I think because that would influence your decision, and I really want to hear your thought processes, and I really want to talk about this. I just really want to talk about it. So thanks for listening. Thanks for keeping up. Take notes, kids. And I'll see you next week.